Okay, hello everyone, welcome back. This is video number 4 in the Law of One series. And in this video we're going to talk more in depth about the harvest, the transition from third to fourth density that's taking place on Earth right now. We're going to talk about why it's important to know this concept and why it's very, very helpful to integrate this into your daily life. Because if we're able to do this, then we can really use our time and our energy extremely efficiently in order to move in the positive direction or the negative direction as we seek for graduation from third density. This is perhaps the single most important concept in all of the material, and if you can understand it and if you can choose to base your life around this belief or this teaching that's taught in the Law of One, you will very rapidly increase your rate of evolution as a human, the rate of your mental evolution, your physical evolution, and your spiritual evolution. Once we make the choice to move along one path or the other, everything changes. The whole experience as a human will start to revolve around that consciously made choice. So I think maybe we'll just go over briefly what we did in the last video. In the video number 3, we talked about the 7 densities. We talked about the level of consciousness or the kind of energy or vibrations that are inherent in each of the 7 densities. So we'll go over them very briefly, just to recap. So first density is the density of pure awareness. It's the density of, on Earth, the 4 elements: air, fire, water, and earth. So we're forming the ability, we're kind of laying the foundation for what the rest of the densities will be progressing through. So we've got to build the foundation for the house to be built on top of. This is the first density, so simple awareness. The second density is the density of growth. This is the density that what starts to grow out of the 4 basic elements on Earth, out of air, fire, water, and earth, right? So this is advanced mineral life, like crystals or healing gemstones, I guess some people call them, right? This is plant life. All plants are conscious and aware, and they're growing and they're evolving out of the 4 basic elements. Animals are also second density creatures. So creatures or entities or beings that have a level of awareness that goes beyond basic air, fire, water, and earth, right? This is second density. They're growing now, they're evolving, they're becoming more aware, but they're not totally self-aware. Good. So third density is self-awareness, right? This is us as human beings in our physical body. We have total self-awareness, or let's say we have the opportunity to have complete awareness of self. And we have freedom of will, right? This is the important distinction between second and third, is that animals and plants don't have freedom of will to go wherever they want. They're bound by the laws of nature to behave in certain ways if they want to grow, if they want to keep, let's say, living or evolving, right? Now, we as humans we have free will to do anything. We can sit and we can meditate, or we can go and we can become drug addicts, or we can jump off a bridge, or we can do whatever we want, right? This is the freedom that we have in third density of self-aware beings that can move in any direction. Good. So this is the one on Earth that is ending right now, right? Third density is ending this level of just self-consciousness for self-consciousness' sake. We're moving out of this and into the fourth density. Now, fourth density is the density of love or understanding. So we're learning the lessons of love here on Earth. That's what all of us have been born to do. We're all at a point in our soul evolution through many, many incarnations as humans or as third density conscious beings on other planets, perhaps, and other solar systems, who have progressed to the point where we are now ready as souls to experience the teachings and to learn the lessons that would allow us to graduate into the fourth density, the density of love. Okay, we'll come back to this and we're going to talk about it a lot in this video. So fourth density, density of love, compassion, forgiveness, acceptance, togetherness. Good. Fifth density, density of wisdom or light. So this is the density where wisdom is gained in addition to compassion, because love is oftentimes foolish, right? Or it's oftentimes we don't necessarily, if we love something, it can kind of blind us and it can make us a bit rash in our decision making, or it can make us a bit foolish, right? So in fifth density, we learn we learn the lessons of wisdom and knowledge, and how to start to use love from a compassionate point of view. Good, so that's fifth density, wisdom. Sixth density is the density of unity. Now this is when love and wisdom are blended together. So now we have compassionate wisdom. We have wisdom, but we're using our heart in order to, we're using the wisdom and the heart chakra, the heart center, the energy of forgiveness and love and understanding in order to serve in a very precise, evolved, elevated, highly conscious way. So the density of unity, sixth density. This is where all what Ross says, the paradoxes are resolved. Everything coalesces, or everything starts to come together once again here, right? So there is no right or wrong in the sixth density. There's no positive or negative. There's no yes or no. There's no good versus evil. All of these things are starting to be seen, and it's starting to rain really hard all of a sudden. Cool. Okay, so in sixth density, everything's starting to be seen as one again. Seventh density is what Rock calls the gateway cycle, or the gateway density. In this density, you've learned almost all the lessons there are to learn in this octave of the experience of the creation, and you're journeying back to the one creator now. So seventh density is, we don't know too much about. There's only just a small amount of information that Rock gives on sixth density. Good, so those are the seven densities. And then we'll talk about, now we'll go more in depth about the harvest. And the harvest is what occurs at the end of the 75,000 third density cycle on any planet. We talked in the last video, I shared quotes about the 75,000 year cycle and how the harvest is split into three 25,000 year cycles. At the end of each of these cycles, souls are harvested, or basically the vibrational quality of their being is tested, and you kind of get to see where vibrationally your understanding is, right? So this could be anywhere in the spectrum of the third density energy band, or it may have penetrated the third density and it's going into fourth, right? So what is required in order for us to be harvestable from the third density into the fourth? That's what we're going to focus more on in this video. Good. Okay, so we talked about this in the last video, but we'll go over it again because I want to make sure that people understand this. So at the end of harvest for the third density, as harvest takes place, there are three options or three pathways that a soul will take upon harvest. The first is to repeat third density. This means that we have not learned the lessons that would allow us the vibrational quality of being, or the mental understanding that would allow us to move on out of this third density situation, third dimensional situation, into the fourth. Right? So repeat third density, option number one. Option number two, we graduate fourth density, positive. We're graduating along the service to others path. We've chosen to love others enough to be able to graduate into fourth density, where we will then refine that service to others. We will learn the lessons of love, or we will be in the vibration of love, consciously serving others almost all of the time, in order to move into the fifth density, positive, still along the service to others path. Good. So second option, fourth density, positive. Third option, fourth density, negative. So in this case, we've graduated and we have the vibrational quality or understanding because we've chosen to serve ourself to the degree necessary to graduate along the negative path, or the service to self path. Good. So again, we mentioned this in the last video. This is what we would call evil people, right? People who manipulate others and manipulate resources and hoard and are very greedy, and they lie and they cheat and they steal and they take whatever they want in order to benefit themselves at the expense of all other people and things. So this is what, I guess, the elite, the cabal, the Illuminati, these hidden forces that seem to run everything on this planet. These are the people that are very close to graduating along the fourth density negative path, or they're close to graduating into the fourth density along the service to self negative path. Good, so this is crucial to understand. Now, if you're watching this video, we're trying to graduate along the positive path, right? If you're trying to graduate along the negative path, you're wasting your time here, so you can probably go. Good. So let's see. Okay, at this point we'll talk about the choice more in depth, what Ra calls the choice. And the choice is the decision that we must make as third density beings in order to graduate into the fourth density. There are two paths that we can take in order to graduate or to attempt to graduate from third density. Again, one is serving others, which is called the positive path. In that case, we're polarizing positively along the path of serving others. We can also choose a negative path. We can polarize negatively by serving ourselves at the expense of all other people. So the concept of polarity is important to understand here, right? Like in electrical polarity, we have two currents and an alternating current running up and down. One pole is positive, one pole is negative, and there's an interplay, there's a switching between the two polarities. However much energy is built up on one side, it's building the potential on the other to hold a charge. So this is the same exact thing that happens in consciousness in the third density. And Ra has a few interesting quotes on this that help to kind of paint a fuller picture. Let's see. Don asks, this is session 19, question and answer 19. It then seems that there is an extreme potential in this polarization, the same there is in electricity. We have a positive and negative pole. The more you build the charge on either of these, the greater potential difference and the greater ability to do work, as we call it, in the physical. This would seem to me to be the exact analogy that we have in consciousness here. Is this correct? Ra says, this is precisely correct. Ra only used this term precisely correct a few times, so it must have felt good for Don to kind of hear, that he was dead on. Most of the time they would say, that's generally correct, or that's incorrect. Okay, the next session 20, question and answer number 9. Don says, yesterday we were speaking of the split that takes place in third density when an entity either consciously or because of bias chooses the path of service to others or service to self. The philosophical question of why such a split even exists came up. It is my impression that as it is in electricity, if we have no polarity in electricity, we have no electricity, we have no action. Therefore, I am assuming that in consciousness, without such polarity, there would be no action or experience. Is this correct? Ra says, this is correct. You may use the general term work. Then the concept of service to self or service to others is mandatory if we wish to have work, whether it be work in consciousness or work in the mechanical or Newtonian concept of the physical. Is this correct? Ra says, this is correct with one addendum. The coil, as you may understand this term, is wound, is potential, is ready. The thing that is missing without polarization is the charge. Don asks, then the charge is provided by individualized consciousness. Is this correct? Ra says, the charge is provided by the individualized entity, using the inpourings and instreamings of energy by the choices of free will. So this is critical to understand. Every choice that we make, whether we understand this concept or not, we are polarizing towards the positive by serving others, or we're polarizing towards the negative by serving ourselves. So I think it's important to understand that you don't have to be conscious of this process, but if you're not conscious of this process, you're leaving the game. You don't understand the game. You don't understand what you're playing or why you're playing it. To become conscious of this concept and to understand it more fully is to know precisely what's happening on Earth and precisely how you can use your time and your energy to move along the positive path. So, of course, I am choosing to take Ra's teachings as truth. I take them as truth because when I first read them, they hit me like a ton of bricks, and I felt like I was relearning something that I had always known. It just made sense to me. As dense as it seemed, and as dense as it was, and as odd as it sounded in comparison to everything that I had learned previously from growing up, or from my school, or from my culture, it was completely in left field, out in left field by some distance compared to everything else. But it just made sense. So I am choosing to take this as truth. Now, this is faith-based, of course. There's no way for me to prove whether any of this is true or not. Only proof that I have is how this has worked for me in my personal life. And since I made the choice that I was going to serve others and I was going to know myself and heal myself so that I could serve others in an ever-evolving degree of let's say, ever evolving degrees of higher precision and higher quality, right? To be able to hold more light, to be able to hold more wisdom and more compassion, and to use the lessons of self-healing in order to help others, to give them an opportunity to heal themselves. So this has worked for me because my life in 5 very short years has completely been flipped upside down, and I went from very depressed and very angry and very bitter and resentful and lost and confused and victimized and any other negative thing that you can think of, addicted. I was drinking a lot. I was abusing marijuana, so I didn't have to think about my problems, so I didn't have to relate to the world in a meaningful way. I went from that to having many experiences of the one creator moving through me and living inside of me, and being able to look outside and to look into other people's eyes and into other people's experiences and see the creator at work. And it's been quite miraculous. And I'm going to do a series of videos on my personal story and evolution with this. But right, so if we knew the game, if we knew how to win the game, would you want to win, or would you want to come back here again and have to play this third density game all over again? So I think if we knew the rules and we knew the game, that we would want to win the game. So Ra is basically laying out in the Law of One how to win at this game of life. And maybe that's not the right term. Not to win, because I don't think repeating it is losing necessarily, because at some point you're going to learn the lessons of third density, right? And you will graduate at some point. It might take another 50 rounds or something, but if you could, let's say, if you could get out of this experience and move on to the next level of experience, would you do what was necessary in this lifetime? And I think most people would answer yes. So this is the key right here, to use your time and your energy to polarize positively, serving others, loving others, or polarize negatively, serving yourself at the expense of all other beings. Right? So this is a nice quote that sums up the situation. This is session 30, question and answer 1. Don says, I'm going to make a statement and then let you correct it if I have made any errors. This is the statement. Creation is a single entity or unity. If only a single entity exists, then the only concept of service is service to self. If this single entity subdivides, then the concept of service of one of its parts to another part is born. From this concept springs the equality of service to self or to others. It would seem that as the logos subdivided, parts would select each orientation. As individualized entities emerge in space-time, then I would assume that they have polarity. Is this statement correct? Ra says, this statement is quite perceptive and correct until the final phrase, in which we note that the polarities begin to be explored only at the point when a third density entity becomes aware of the possibility of choice between the concept of service to self or service to others. This marks the end of what you may call the unself-conscious or innocent phase of conscious awareness. And then in question and answer, or session 30, question 5, when a mind-body-spirit complex becomes aware of the possibility of service to self or other self, then the mind-body-spirit complex is activated. So this is basically Ra is saying, or perhaps early on in the third density, you don't know that you're serving others or you're serving yourself. You're just running on instinct, right? You're still using the reptilian brain, the animalistic brain, the fight or flight mechanism to just try to survive, just to try to make it, right? So maybe you mistreat someone, but you don't do it intentionally, right? So this is what Ra calls the unself-conscious or the innocent phase of the third density experience. Once someone becomes consciously aware of the possibility, I could serve this other person right now, or I could do something that would be compassionate and kind and helpful, or I could use my energy in this same moment to get something for myself, or to manipulate this other person, or to manipulate a situation so that the energy revolves around me and I'm getting what I want and I don't care what happens to anyone else. Right? So this is when the innocent phase is over, and every moment is now a moment that we're polarizing positive or negative. Now, this isn't meant to scare anyone, right? I'm not trying to scare you or to think like you have to be hyper vigilant and aware of how you spend your time and don't do anything negative, because Ra gives numbers right? It gives a percentage of what is required to graduate fourth density positive or negative. So not only are we now learning about the concept of polarity and choosing to serve others or serve ourselves, we have numbers that Ra has given on what is required percentage-wise in order to be harvestable along positive or negative lines. Good, so, oh no, where did I have it? 50%, 50, okay, so Don asks here, there we go. Okay, so Don says in the book Oaspe, which I have not read fully, but I've started, and it's a pretty trippy book. It states that if an individual is more than 50% for service to others, that is goes over the 50% service to others and is less than 50% service to self, then that being is harvestable. Is this a correct statement? Ross says this is correct if the harvesting is to be done for the fourth density, positive fourth dimensional level. What must an entity's percentage be if he is to be harvested for the negative? Ra says, the entity who wishes to pursue the service to self path must attain a grade of 5, that is 5% service to others, 95% service to self. It must approach totality. The negative path is quite difficult to attain harvestability upon and requires great dedication. This is great. Don asks, why is the negative path so much more difficult a path to attain harvestability upon than the positive? Ross says, this is due to the distortion of the law of one, which indicates that the gateway to intelligent infinity be a gateway at the end of a straight and narrow path, as you may call it. This part right here is critical. To attain 51% dedication to the welfare of others is as difficult as attaining a grade of 5% dedication to others. The, shall we say, sinkhole of indifference is between those two. Great, so Ra has now given percentages so that you know precisely, or roughly, let's say, what needs to be done in order to graduate positive or negative. If you're serving others 51% of the time, you can still serve yourself 49% of the time. If you're just over that 50% mark, you're harvestable for fourth density positive, right? That's not too much to ask, right? So that means that in your mind, in your emotions, in your feelings, and the energy that you project out in your actions, if you're serving others 51% of the time and yourself even 49% of the time, then you're harvestable for fourth density. So not too much to ask. Right now, the negative path to graduate fourth density negative, much more intense. So you have to be serving yourself 95% of the time, serving others only 5% of the time. So this is almost complete mental focus, mental energy expenditure, almost completely to serving the self and manipulating others to get what you want. And Ross says this is a very difficult path to take, right? So we can look at the elite, we can look at the people who, whatever we call the Illuminati, or the people who own the banks and who run all the monies and who start the wars and who make money off both sides of wars and who, create false flag attacks to manipulate perception of entire civilizations. These people are, I would say, pretty close to graduating along this negative path. Maybe we'll do a video later about examples of positive polarity and negative polarity. Humans that have existed on Earth that were able to graduate fourth density positive or fourth density negative. Okay, so this is great to understand. Oh, and it says, that last portion, to attain 51% dedication to the welfare of others is as difficult as attaining a grade of 5% dedication to others. Now, anything in between there, right? Anything in between 5% or 50%, you've got to repeat their density, right? So if you're serving others, or you're serving yourself rather, 50% of the time, and others 50% of the time, you have to repeat their density. If you're serving yourself 51% of the time and serving others 49% of the time, you repeat their density. If you're serving yourself 60% of the time and others 40% of the time, repeat their density. So we have to make sure that we don't fall into what Ra calls the sinkhole of indifference. These are the conditions that will cause you or force you to repeat their density. And it won't be on this planet, because the 75,000 year cycle for third density is over on planet Earth. This is pretty much the end. Any beings that are being born now are preparing for fourth density positive. The Earth itself will be fourth density positive. Forgive me for a moment while I try to find that quote on the website, because I don't have it right in front of me. Okay, well, I can't find the quote, but I know for a fact that in here it says that the Earth will be fourth density positive after third density experience. So here we go. We have the game, we have the rules of the game, we have why we're here on Earth. We're here to move to the fourth density. In order to do that, in order to have the opportunity to experience and to work, to use our energy, we have the concept of polarity, positive and negative opportunities. So we're either unconsciously using our time and our energy to polarize along the positive or negative path, or we're consciously using our time or energy to move along the positive or negative path. And I think one important thing to understand is that you have to, if you make this choice, if you make the choice and you say, I'm going to consciously seek to serve others so that I can reach graduation, or I'm going to consciously seek to serve myself so I can reach graduation, that moment when you make that choice is the turning point in your life. So this is something that I don't think I fully understood when I made the choice. I didn't understand the responsibility initially that would come with this. So I want to share that bit with you and say that if you're contemplating this, there's no need to be scared or anything. Just know that once you say to yourself and you put the intention out there, and the creation hears you make this statement and makes this intention and this dedication, once you've done this, the whole life pattern will change. Everything will start to change, and you'll start to be given opportunities to evolve more rapidly. You're going to be given the opportunities, and you're going to meet the people, and you're going to be in these situations that will allow you to progress and to heal the mind, heal the body, heal the spirit, to the point where you can then have the energy and the awareness and the level of consciousness necessary to graduate fourth density positive. I'm not going to talk about fourth density negative because that's not why I'm here, and I can't give any kind of information along that path. All that we know is that there are paths, there are techniques, teachings, ways of being that increase the energy available to one so that they can move more quickly along either path, right? So we'll talk about that, the positive one. I mean, that's what we're going to do in these next videos, is to give the teachings, give the techniques that Ross shared, and I will be sharing the ones that I personally use every day to put myself in a mental perspective, and to seat my consciousness in this remembrance, in the remembrance every day that I wake up that, okay, I'm here to serve others and I'm here to move along this path. I've come to Earth to do this, to help others and to continue healing myself and to continue balancing myself so that I can serve in ever evolving, ever increasing levels of service. So this is really key to understand. So this is not it's not a joke, but it's also not something to be taken deadly seriously, right? We've got all the time in the world to do this. If you choose to do it now, I think you will be happy that you've chosen to make that decision. And I am here to help you in whatever way I can, with what I know and with what I experience and what I teach and what I'm constantly learning, in order to make that process more gentle for you and to make that process more digestible for you. It's funny because, my life has changed so much in 5 years, and many times, I mentioned earlier that, or in another video, that I teach Kundalini yoga and meditation, and I do healing work. I work with crystals, and I do channeling, and I do many other things since I've dedicated my life, I've just learned and I've really focused on. And some people will say, wow, like you really look happy, and like it's amazing that you can do these things, and this and that. And I say, well, I'm not special in any way. My experience has been special to me, but everyone else has their own special story to live too. It just turns out for me that when I found the Law of One and I found Kundalini yoga, within just a few months of each other, that was my awakening, and that was the beginning of my initiation. And I've continued my initiation, and it hasn't been without its hardships. I always say that people, when I'm teaching or when I'm holding space for them during healing sessions, that they're seeing the best part of my experience, right? They didn't see the times where I was curled up on the floor, bawling my eyes out, trying to figure out how to get past this certain trauma or this certain false belief about myself that I didn't have what it took to be who I was born to be, that I wasn't going to be able to get it right, that I wasn't going to be able to succeed, or that I was going to succeed, and that was really scary. So everyone gets to see the best parts of it, but they don't get to see the times where I was a total mess and I had kind of fallen to bits. So my hope in these videos is that I can, through my own personal experiences and through precise kind of giving of the teachings in an order that I think will allow people to find balance more, not more quickly necessarily, but to have that stability from the beginning of the journey, or from earlier on in the journey than I did, because I went through several periods of being very unbalanced and very sort of in crisis, because as the true self starts to awaken and it starts to want to come out, all of the false beliefs that we hold have to fall away. And that's frightening, and that's very, it's dangerous in that the ego starts to try to fight back, and it starts to try to dictate the game, and it starts to try to tell you, do you need to stop what you're doing, or that you're not good enough. It will try to do what it needs to do to survive, right? So I went through some periods of intense lack of balance and intense negative mental situations and emotional situations. So if I can help anyone to move along this positive path a little more smoothly, then that's my intention, and that's what these videos are for. So I think that's good for now. We talked about the harvest and the choice that we have to make. So I don't know, this is so critical. Like I can't place too much importance on these concepts or understanding these concepts. If you have any questions or anything, please leave a comment below and I'll answer it to the best of my ability. And what next? I think after this we can start going into the teachings that Ra gave on how to move closer to the law of one, and how to polarize along the positive path in the third density, moving into fourth. Good. And then in the long run we'll be doing Kundalini Yoga, Kriyas and meditations, and many other things. Whatever I come up with, whatever my intuition tells me to do in regards to this whole process. Good. So thank you very much for watching. I hope it was helpful, and in the next video we'll go straight into concepts that Ra gave, mental things to contemplate and to meditate on that will help you move closer to the law of one. Okay, thanks. Bye.